when you say niching down, they're like, yeah, I'll just create content for this one niche and then they'll all come to me. But then when they come to you, it's like they're going to ask you the question, what about your service is specific to plumbers? Why are you getting better results for plumbers than someone else? You might be able to attract that clientele, but how are you helping to solve their problems better than the next person? And that's where the niching down really has to live. You have to be able to answer those questions and speak specifically to how you're solving a problem for that specific customer.
Right. Well, and that's actually really important to notice because you've doubled, tripled your company at the same time as in the last 4 years. Most agencies have actually shrunk, and they've worse than shrunk because what's happened is that 2021 happened. There was a big burst. There was all this money, people throwing around, growth.
Yeah.
And then they built up these teams, and now they're like, okay, we have these teams, our expenses have gone up, but our sales have gone down. So some of them are actually in a much worse off situation versus you guys have actually been able to profitably more than double your company. Hi, this is Mandi Ellefson, host of the Hands Off CEO podcast. Today, I have on the show a really special guest, a member of our tribe, actually, Jerry Vinci. And welcome to the show, Jerry.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone.
It's such a pleasure. And Jerry is a senior living marketing growth specialist, and his company is CCR Growth. And tell me about CCR Growth. Like, who do you guys serve, and what kind of results do you get for clients?
We're a digital marketing agency that focuses specifically on the senior living industry. So we typically help senior living providers or senior care businesses generate better leads, better results. We kind of focus on a couple different areas: marketing. We help with sales processes, and then the systems that they're using to measure their results. So it's kind of a 1, 2, 3 punch. And so there's a big challenge right now in the senior living industry because just the number of older adults that are entering the market is rapidly increasing over the next 5 years and then the next 10 years after that. And so there's a lot of providers out there that need help. They need help with visibility. They need help getting their message out. They need helping getting their sales teams to more effectively communicate with prospects. So we're kind of, focused on all three of those areas.
Awesome. So what kind of results do you get for clients?
The biggest thing that I always tell people is that we help you fill rooms faster, because that's the biggest thing. At the end of the day, in my industry, it always comes down to dollars and cents, right? Every business does, but I think because we're dealing with people and we're not dealing necessarily in financial transactions, there's more context, and it's more attractive for people when they hear you say that I can help solve your problem faster, right? So that's kind of where we focused, and we tried a couple different ways. When we first started this, we had a couple of different offers where we were like, we had a guarantee of we helped generate what was it, 1.5 million in additional revenue per community in 12 months or less. That was like the first guarantee that we had. And we're just like, this just isn't sticking. Like nobody's really resonating with that. And we found working in a corporate space where communities are typically part of a larger conglomerate, right? Or there's a marketing team, but then there's the CEO, the CFO, the COO who's sitting above that. And typically we're working with the marketing teams or the sales team. So we're not actually working with the executive team in most cases. So the marketing team doesn't really care about revenue. They care about generating leads. They care about getting results, and then, being able to do that consistently. So that's ultimately why we kind of shifted around that language to really appeal to the problem that they're trying to solve.
Great. So, but you actually can, though, for each community, add $1.5 million for each community.
Yeah. I mean, it obviously would depend on the size of the community. I would say that's probably the minimum that we would be able to add. The biggest thing that we're able to do is to drive down the cost that communities are paying per move-in, because in the senior living industry, a lot of communities, they're paying referral agencies to essentially send them leads. And then if this community takes one of those leads from a referral agency, they have to pay out at least 1 month's worth of rent toward for that referral agency and as like the finder's fee. And sometimes it's even more than that. So essentially every single resident that they get through that, they're losing money for the first 1 or 2 months. And that can cost them anywhere from 4,000, 5,000 up to like $12,000 for that one move in, depending on the level of care that that person's moving into. Whereas we can come in and we can give them an entire marketing team, an entire marketing strategy. And for on average, we're getting move-ins for anywhere from like $1,500 to $3,000, and $3,000 is on like the high end. So it's typically much less than that.
Right. So you're able to fill the rooms for a fraction of the price that your competitors
Yeah,
can.
exactly.
So I like what you said about, you first looked at $1.5 million in extra revenue per community. And if you're looking at 10 communities, that's a lot of money, right? But
Sure.
then as you tested that, you recognized that wasn't the right thing that landed with them, but we got to start somewhere. So you guys just knowing and being able to get clear as I know you went through the process of niching down and identifying where you can make your biggest impact. Just knowing that you could be able to, at a minimum, add a 1.5 million per community that you take on for a client. How does that impact how you're going out and selling and the confidence that you have?
Yeah, I mean, knowing that right off the bat really helps, because I think, again, this is a people industry. So when you can start quantifying what that number means to that community, if you can save a community $1.5 million or generate an additional $1.5 million, that's like, that's multiple people that they can bring in, staff members. They can add more programs for their residents. They can improve their culinary program. They can create just way more opportunities for residents, for staff, and for family members to just have a way better experience. So overall, it just completely changes the dynamic within the industry and within that community.
And see, that makes a lot of sense too, because you're looking at, this is the amount of value we can create for them, like dollar wise, but how this translates to them is that, for example, the culinary program, that's a really great competitive advantage too. And you listed a number of those things there, but it ultimately makes their business be a lot better. And they might have some real emotional triggers to those things as well.
Big time. I mean, you think about the fact that if somebody's thinking about moving into a community, I mean, your meals, right? Three meals a day, where are you getting your food from? That's going to be a big deal and a big selling point. So anytime they can make improvements to things like that, or the activities, if a community can build a movie theater right there on premises, so somebody doesn't have to go somewhere else to enjoy that activity now. You see some of the larger communities now are building golf courses and like just a lot of crazy amenities just to create more of a lifestyle community, rather than just this facility or institution that we're sending old people to, where they just get to live out the rest of their days. It's not like that anymore. It's about expansion, and people are moving into these communities who aren't even retired yet. So we're not even calling them retirement communities now. It's like it's lifestyle.
Well, and I love that. And what I'm hearing is that you're not a marketing expert at all. What you really are is sorry. What you really are is this partnership. You are a category expert for retirement living, and you are actually innovating a whole industry, not just in how they fill up their the rooms, but how they're able to actually add all these other amenities, because you're actually giving them the profit to be able to do that. And that's changing lives.
Yeah, I mean, two things I'll say about that. This industry has gone through a dramatic shift since COVID. I mean, there was, before COVID, a lot of communities were seeing profit margins of like 40% or higher. And then COVID hit and their profit margins dropped to the 10, 20%. I mean, which most businesses would be grateful for that, right? So, but for them, having that additional operating budget and revenue and profit margin really helped them create opportunities to continue to expand and build and grow as a community. And they lost all of that from COVID. So there was this dramatic shift of, now, how do we get that back? How do we still create these programs? How do we bring in the best staff possible without without that profit margin. So it's almost like a calling, and like you said, a partnership. But what I want to say is that's not where we got started ultimately. I mean, I've been in business for 21 years, and I started off as just a general marketing agency. We happened to stumble into the senior living space about 12, 13 years ago. And the first type of community that we worked with was a CCRC, and that's where the name CCR Growth comes from. It was kind of like paying homage to our first client in this space, and we just fell in love with it because it was more than just about business. It was actually like we're helping these people, we're helping communities find residents to potentially find their last place to call home. Like that's a pretty heavy mission. So we just fell in love with that.
So I know when back a few years ago when we connected, how many years ago was that? About maybe 5, 4? I can't remember.
Yeah, 4 years, I think.
Okay. So I know that you were still positioned as a digital marketing agency and you worked with a number of different niches. So how is your business different now versus when you were working with a number of niches under like the brand of an agency, like a digital marketing agency?
I think it's probably one of the scariest things for a small business to do is to niche down or to think about niching down, especially when you say, well, I can serve all of these people, because in marketing, most businesses have the same problem. They're either struggling with sales, they're struggling with visibility, they're struggling with reputation. Those are typically the three biggest challenges. So that's not really industry specific. You know, so I think from my perspective, it was hard to just let that go and say, hey, I'm going to really just think about one industry and how I can solve problems for it. But I can tell you, from the time I started with you, that whole process started, right? We started thinking about, okay, what is a niche that we really enjoy working in? Number one. Number two, how do we take our entire business model and now reshape it to this industry? And that's ultimately what we had to do. And the outcome of that is that it's it's so laser focused. Everyone on our team is now a subject matter expert in one industry. So I can put any one of my team members on the phone with one of my clients, and I know that they're going to be able to speak intelligently about what is impacting their results, what challenges this client is experiencing, and how we're positioned to help them with the strategies that we implement, because it's all focused on that senior living industry. So you can just step into these situations with so much more confidence. And ultimately, because you're talking, living, eating, breathing this day in and day out, you just naturally become confident and a subject matter expert yourself. It's kind of impossible not to.
Hmm. So how much easier is that scaling a company like that versus what you were doing before?
How much
How
what?
much easier is it to scale your company in this way versus what you were doing before?
Oh God, it's night and day. I mean, before it was all about just finding the right people and essentially getting them on the bus. And now it's been night and day, because we're building up a name for ourselves in one industry that to the point. And I would say we're lucky because we're in an industry that there's not a ton of competition. I would say there's probably a handful of maybe 5 to 10 um, marketing and advertising agencies who are exclusively dedicated to my industry. So it's a small group, but the ones who've been here have been here for a long time. And I think a lot of our prospective clients are looking for something new. They're looking for something different and something innovative. And we're coming in with a totally digital strategy, which in the senior living space is kind of unheard of, because it's an antiquated space, to say the least. Like, they're usually 5, 10 years behind when it comes to tech and technology. I mean, they're like just getting on the bandwagon with AI and with data and personalization. And there's all these aspects of marketing that we've been using for years, in other industries, and they're just kind of getting their feet wet.
Hmm. So one of the things that I heard you say that I really want to reiterate is that you're building an entire brand around this. You're becoming a subject matter expert, not just in like your craft of like, we do these tactics and we generate, when we do this work, this is the service, which is what most professional services are doing. They're like, here's a service, here's the deliverables. And what we're seeing in the market is that is really not working. Everyone's starting to wake up to that because money is no longer cheap, It's a little bit harder economy, and prospects are pretty tight in the purse strings. So just going after and saying, I'm going to give you this deliverables, everybody's doing that. That's not unique at all.
Yeah.
And they're willing to pay a lot more for a subject matter expert who actually has a proven track record, and you've built an entire brand around that.
We have. And I think one of the other important pieces of it is it's not just about building the brand, but it's about building something proprietary within the brand that makes it unique, you know?
Exactly.
And that was something that we've done over the last 2 years. I mean, I fleshed out the concept of what CCR Growth was going to be during our time together when we were working on this. And then I took about a year to really just figure out how we were going to deliver this to the market in a way that was going to be unique and make people stop and think about the way that they were doing things. So we created our own way of delivering this product. And there was a coaching session, not a coaching session, but a strategy that I worked through with someone else, that it's called a unique mechanism essentially. And what we're doing is we're answering all those questions about how we deliver service, right? How do we do it? Why is it better? Why is it faster? Why is it more effective? And probably 50 other questions. But when you can answer all of those questions and really identify what makes your thing better than the next person or more unique than the next person, then you have a platform. Then you have something you can go out and sell. And that's ultimately what we did. We're CCR Growth, but we have the senior innovation growth suite, right? Our senior growth innovation suite. I'm sorry. It's called SGIS for short. That's our platform. That's our proprietary platform that we've developed. That is exactly how we scale results for our client. And we're the only ones who do it that way.
Right. So underneath this brand, you're building IP that allows you to be able to deliver results better than anyone else. And one of the things I want to stress is that this takes some time to fully see the full impact of the results of becoming the top 1%. And you've become the top 1% in your industry. And to become top 1% in your industry, you have to choose an industry.
That's step one.
I know it's so obvious, but it's people seem to miss that a lot.
I have a lot of agency friends, just being in the space, that naturally happens. And I can tell you, most of them have said to me, wow, it's so amazing what you've built. I wish I would have niched down when you did, but I haven't. And here I am still kind of stuck doing what I was doing 2 or 3 years ago, and they're just seeing the trajectory is just completely different for us right now. And I can only attribute that to niching down and then growing and building everything around that focus.
I love it. I love it. So, one of the things that we talked about, it taking longer to see the full impact and full results of becoming a 1% brand, and being willing to put that time in there. But I also want to talk about, you can see results from this very quickly too. I remember pretty early on, you were able to connect the dots and actually start hiring a salesperson because it was so much more clear. I remember that, one of those things, and how your pricing increased on top of that. What kind of things did you see pretty early on as you're making the transition?
Yeah, I think personnel was the biggest challenge, because for whatever reason, when you niche down, it's like people are either on the bus or they're not, right? They're either all in or they're not. And I think it really requires your team, at least in a smaller business, right? I mean, we have 30 employees right now, so it's a smaller team. When you have a small team, you have to have buy-in from everybody. It's not something where just me as the CEO can just say, this is what we're going to do. We're going in this direction, get behind me and I'll lead the way. It's like everybody has to really believe in the mission, and that's one of the things we've made sure that we've done. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. You did. That
Okay.
makes, and you had a lot of great things to add to that. That's one of the things that we see too, is that as you're making this transition, what's happening is just a complete up level in your company, and up level in your pricing, and up level in and not an up level in your pricing. As one of the things that we notice as we walk our clients through this process is it's that the pricing is not because we said go and increase your pricing, go and double your pricing, which we typically do, but it's because you're seeing what you're actually quantifying, what the results are that you can deliver for clients. And that's part of how you actually select your right client, because you look at your use cases for what kind of results can we create for clients, and under the right circumstances, what kind of results. I mean, and you saw it. Okay, we can generate minimum 1.5 per community. So that right there, that number is a more compelling number than some of the other ones. And also on top of that, there were some other factors that you felt really passionate about it, and that really makes a difference too. So when we're like evaluating the niches, we're evaluating where we could deliver the biggest results for each use case, and then narrowing down in that. And then you need to get everybody on board for that, because there are going to be some people that are more on the lax side, let's call it, and they're not really being abundant, and they're scared. And I don't know if you've seen this, but like we see this all the time, that you have team members that are scared, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to lead and guide them through it. But there's some people who are just not going to make the cut, and I think that's just part of it. So how did you be able to work through that, as not everybody was able to make the cut?
For us, I really think the salesperson that I hired ended up becoming our agency director. So that was one of the best things that we did, because it allowed me to really just focus on what niching down would look like, and how we would scale the business around that. Because if I had to worry about managing everyone in the business as well as managing the business on top of it, that would have never happened. That would have never happened. One of the things too we talked about was results. And I think like when you niche down, one of the biggest challenges is your clientele, they're going to want to see results that are specific to them. And I think that's the scary part too, when you niche down, is, oh, I'm not going to have anything to show these people. Like I haven't worked in this niche before. How am I going to show results? So when you say it takes time, it does take time, because you may only have one client in this niche or two clients in this niche. And you have to build some case studies. You have to build results. You have to be able to prove that that value proposition has to be real. You can't have, platitudes out there just saying we can do this, we can do that, blah, blah, blah. Then you're just like everybody else. But when you can actually, say without a shadow of a doubt, I can generate X result for you in X amount of time. Here are the results. Here's 3 other clients that I've done it for. If you want to talk to them, here's a reference, that's the best case scenario, but that does take time to build.
Right. And you're building a body of work. And one of the things that we really stress now, that we didn't talk about as much as when you were going through the program earlier, is around success conditions. And we probably did talk about, I know we talked about the sales criteria and the sales qualification, but it goes even deeper than that, because there's what are the success conditions that we need to be able to create this transformation? And looking backwards, and I'll use that example again. Let's say that you're adding, again, 1.5 million to a community in a year. What success conditions do we need to have in place? Well, we need to probably have a certain size list already that they have. They need to have leads. Maybe they need to have ads running already. Maybe there's certain criteria that they need to have in order for you to be able to do that. And one of the biggest things that we've seen help our clients be able to drive results that are a lot larger than they've ever been able to drive in the past are these success conditions, and getting very clear, starting with the end in mind, and then looking back and saying, what did we do to be able to create that? What do those success conditions look like? And that's what allows you to really be able to step into and claim the top, like you guys have done.
And I think really understanding the numbers of your client too, being able to talk about like LTV, like lifetime value of client acquisition, is huge. Because in our business, for example, if you take like independent living, which it's not like assisted living or memory care where the average length of stay is like anywhere from say 12 to 18 months. For independent living, somebody might live in that community for 10 years or 12 years or 14 years. So if your cost to that community to get one move in is like $3,000, but they're going to have that revenue coming in for the next 10 years, it's a drop in the bucket, So you really have to understand who you're talking to and what type of results they're going to expect from whatever it is that you're delivering to them over a period of time. And then that really changes the conversation too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you only know those numbers and can get that intimate with those numbers and how they all fit together if you're niching down.
Yeah.
And I think
Exactly.
there's a big mistake that's made around niching down where you think, well, we're going to do this service, like we're going to do digital marketing or we're going to do SEO for plumbers. Like you've niched down, at least you've found a market, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean you're becoming a subject matter expert. It doesn't, it's, I think it starts with a thesis where you're saying, these are the kind of outcomes we want to create. This is what we want to be known for. And without that, certainly you've narrowed your focus. That's better, right? And we have a lot of clients that have come to us who they've already what they've considered as niche down, but they're not getting the full results out of niching down. They're like, I've niched down, it's not working. Well, it's maybe it's not working as well. It's because you haven't done what you're talking about here is that being able to talk about the numbers, being able to understand the full impact that you're making across all the board. And now you're no longer a digital marketing agency. You're truly a growth partner for your target market because you're actually able to help them in so many other ways. It just happens organically, I'm sure.
I think you using SEO for plumbers is a perfect example of what not to do, because I think a lot of people, that's where their mind goes. When you say niching down, they're like, yeah, I'll just create content for this one niche and then they'll all come to me. But then when they come to you, it's like, they're going to ask you the question, what about your service is specific to plumbers? Why are you getting better results for plumbers than someone else? You might be able to attract that clientele, but how are you helping to solve their problems better than the next person? And that's where the niching down really has to live. You have to be able to answer those questions and speak specifically to how you're solving a problem for that specific customer.
Right. And I know you've built a platform around this. You have a podcast. What is your
Yep.
podcast called?
It's called From Leads to Leases, and it's all about senior living. I do solo episodes. I also have guests come on and I talk to thought leaders in the industry. We talk about everything from marketing and sales challenges to policy changes at the government level, staffing issues, housing issues. There's all sorts of fun stuff we talk about. But it's been a great experience, and it's actually been one of my top channels for generating new business.
Mm. Um, well, that, and how long have you been running that podcast then?
We started it I started recording episodes like last February, and already we're one of the top senior living podcasts that's out there right now. We're
Okay.
consistently publishing every week. So it hasn't taken much to get out there, but I think because we're continuing to deliver value and we're not really asking for anything in return, it's been a great value add for a lot of our audience.
Right. So do you finding you're getting more business from the connections and the relationships from actually recording the episodes or more from the audience growth more organically?
It's a little bit of both, I would say. A lot of our guests will tell other people about the podcast. Number one, because they're excited because they're on it, so they'll promote it, they'll cross promote it with us, and then when that happens, naturally their audience gets interested, and we'll get people reaching out to us that are like, "Hey, I heard this episode. I'd love to be on your show, or I'd love to learn more about it." Um, we've had, and now that we've grown, we've started getting people reaching out to us, like placement agents who work for specific thought leaders within senior living who are like, I represent so and so. We found your podcast. We thought it'd be a great opportunity for them to come on and talk about their knowledge base. Would you be interested in having them on? So we've gotten a lot of that, and then just through the interactions that I have with guests, because of the process that we have like a pre-interview process, and where I get to meet with them and collaborate on an episode, and then we sit down and have the episode together. So by the end of that, say, hour to 2 hours that I've spent with them, we've built up this rapport where it's then easy to have that conversation and say, if they do work for a senior living community, for example, say, well, how are your results going? What challenges are you guys facing? Because there's always something, right? There's always something that can be improved, and maybe they're the person to talk to, or maybe they'll refer me to somebody else within the organization, and it goes that way. But we've generated business directly, and then we've generated business based on like them referring us to someone else.
Mm. So, how much, since you've changed this, you've made this pivot in the last 4 years, how much growth have you seen in your company?
Um, I mean, without a doubt, revenue wise, I mean, 2 to 3x what we did
Mhm.
before, and team wise, it's at least a twofold increase.
Mhm.
I mean, we just onboarded three new team members yesterday. So it's just every month it seems like more and more is happening, you know.
Right. Well, and that's actually really important to notice because you've double, tripled your company at the same time as in the last 4 years. Most agencies have actually shrunk, and they've worse than shrunk because what's happened is that 2021 happened. There was a big burst. There's all this money people throwing around, growth, growth, growth,
Yeah.
and then they built up these teams, and now they're like, okay, we have these teams, our expenses have gone up, but our sales have gone down. So some of them are actually in a much worse off situation versus you guys have actually been able to profitably more than double your company.
I think being an agency too, at least in my space, being a marketing agency or advertising agency, I think one of your missions should be to recession proof your clients as best as you can.
Yes.
And I think that comes from partnering with them, you know, and making sure that we're solving the problems that are impacting their bottom line first and foremost, because we know that if we can solve those problems, that everything else, you know, is just icing on the cake at that point.
That's actually such a great point too, because one of the things you said about their profit margins before COVID were 40% plus, and after COVID they were 10%. Now you're looking at this; these companies are clearly struggling, and you've been able to insert your business. Your business model is to then improve these companies and make them recession proof. So you've become recession proof by making your clients recession proof.
Exactly.
Right. So I really want to highlight this because not enough service businesses are understanding that the real way that they become relevant or stay relevant in any market, the way that they can charge premium price points, the way that they are seen as the go-to expert in the industry, it's really about the results and the outcomes. And many people think that they're getting great results, but if you can't actually quantify for your client, you hire us, we work together, and you give us X amount of dollars, and in 12 months you'll get a minimum of this type of result, and we need these success conditions to be able to make that happen. If you can't say that, you're going to really struggle to be able to deliver consistent results and recession proof your business.
I think two things, like aim to help should be your core focus as a service provider. And then I can't remember what the second thing I was going to say was. Maybe it'll come to me.
So aim to help is the first one.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think everyone aims to help. And but it's very different when you're looking at a quite a holistic, deep level where you're getting integrated into the depths of the company, and you can't scale that if you're working with 10 different niches. You can't even scale that with 3 or 4. To be able to be able to get that deep in there, you have to really niche down. Otherwise, you just can't be that impactful. And that's something that we've discovered too at Hands Off CEO. We have stayed pretty narrow niche so that we can actually understand like the back of our hand what they're going through.
Second thing I was going to say was to become an indispensable asset, right? So you're aiming to help, but you're aiming to help at a level where if you're not in the picture, it's hard for them to imagine even getting close to the results that they're getting now. And that's, you know, by partnering with your clients, they're not just a client, you're not just a vendor, you're actually partners, and genuinely living in that space where any challenge or problem they have, they're going to come to you. And it might just be the nature of the industry that I'm in, because like I said, I work with a lot of it's essentially small marketing teams who are managing a large amount of communities. They can't possibly do it all by themselves. So we become their outside resource, and they end up just handing us here, take this. Can you do this? Can you help us with this? And so they know that if they have any challenges or problems, they can come to us. And so we've just positioned ourselves like that. You know, if you have anything that comes up for you, let us know, like we'll solve that problem for you. I mean, from everything from designing a custom CRM to, you know, to looking at ad campaigns that another agency is running for them, and we'll audit them for that. Like we'll do anything, you know, to help our clients because we just want to see them succeed.
Mm. And you can do that because you're charging a high enough price point for you to be profitable doing that.
Exactly. That's probably one of the other pieces of advice too that I would say that anybody who wants to niche down is to not get into the minutia of charging per service. You really just have to get into the retainer model where here's our price. For example, it's $96,000 a year to work with us. And for that price, these are the 5 focus areas that we're gonna be working on with you. And leave it at that. You can talk about certain services, but when you start itemizing things, that's when the clients, they start checking things off the list. They start pulling, we don't need that. We only use that it just gets messy real fast. So retainer, it gives you the space. And then if you can also dictate the terms, like you were saying, conditions for success, if you can dictate the terms of what that retainer looks like for example, running ads, like we reserve the right to choose how we're going to use your ad budget, whether we're going to put it on Google or Meta or some other platform. And we're going to decide, based on what's working and what's generating the best results for you, we're going to keep that front and center. So we reserve the right, and we maintain control that way. If we were to allow the clients to dictate the budgets and what each service looks like, it would just get so messy so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jerry, it's fantastic seeing your progress here. I'm just so proud of what you've been able to do over the past 4 years. It's just,
Thank you.
It's really incredible. And for anyone listening who maybe knows someone is in senior care living and would maybe want to get in connection with you or refer them, how do they get in touch with you?
If you go to LinkedIn, you can search Jerry Vinci. You can find me that way, or you can search for CCR Growth on LinkedIn or ccrgrowth.com. That would probably be the best way to find us and learn more about what we do.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Hands-Off CEO with Mandi Ellefson. If you want to work less and make more, make sure you subscribe and get a new episode every week.